So I have to admit before I do this that doing these kind of videos really make me nervous. And not because of the topic, but more so that I really don't get social media. Um, and it feels weird to be talking to a camera and that there's this video out there that everyone can see. But that's neither here or there. Um, I've been asked to do a series of videos answering questions about my book journey to easier and lighter. And so here we are. First question I got was, why did I write this? And I realized that a lot of people may not know that this is actually a rewrite of a book. So about 15 years ago, I wrote another book simply called Easier and Lighter Healing from Sexual Abuse. Because I'd grown up being abused, and by the time I was probably in my early 20s, I had gotten to a really good place. I felt safe. Um, I felt like I had healed from a lot of the issues that were going on, a lot of the insecurities, a lot of issues of shame, a lot of issues of forgiveness. And as I looked back on my journey, I realized two things. One, that I had this trail of poetry that I had written along the way of just prayers and concerns and how I processed this healing journey through poetry. Um, and two, that I didn't really have anyone to share it with. Like I didn't have a person I could call and be like, man, look how far I've come without because people didn't really talk about abuse in the church. And so I wanted to create something where people could do that. And so I created a Bible study that used not just my story, but other stories in the Bible, the story of Jesus, the story of people like Tamar, the woman with the issue of blood, just to combine and create something that gave some really practical biblical lessons that could address any issues of trauma or suffering or any areas where we feel stuck. And so I wrote that, but I just kind of wrote it and put it on the shelf and didn't do much with it. And then probably about 3 years ago, I was dealing with grief. I'd lost a couple of pregnancies, and I think that grief, it dug up a lot of issues that weren't completely settled in my past that I thought were. Um, and it made me really look back in my life. And I almost like I was getting to a point where I was getting stuck in my past and stuck in my mind. Um, and so in addition to like praying and going to counseling, I realized that I needed another way to process. And I got a text from a family member who said, I don't know what you're going through, but God told me that you've always gotten yourself through writing and you need to write now. And so I went back to Easier and Lighter. And as I was reading it, I realized that it was speaking to a lot of the issues in my life, but that I've grown so much in perspective. I've grown in the sense that, I wasn't I wasn't even that person anymore. Now I'm married and I have a child and I have a full-time job and I have a minister who preaches and teaches regularly. And there was so much more that I wanted to add. There was so much more that I had to say that I had learned. And so as I began to kind of rewrite those chapters, I realized that it couldn't just be another edition. It was his own book, but it did harken back a lot to that original book. And so, yeah, that's why I wrote it. I think it can help a lot of people who are just feeling stuck in their own trauma, that feel overwhelmed by it, that feel that God isn't speaking to it, or that God doesn't have anything to say about it because the church is silent. Um, and I think it gives a language to issues like a biblical language, to issues of things like shame and forgiveness, and how do we deal with grace and justice when it comes to issues of abuse, which is such a relevant topic now. And so then I think beyond why that I rewrite it is why do I share it? I think it's weird to kind of walk into the world or walk into a room and people know about the hardest experiences of life. But I think that's also the beauty of the Bible is that we get to read characters and we get to know about the best things that they've done, but also the worst things that they've done and the worst things that they've experienced. And if God got it right, and He always gets it right, we get to know them. We get to know God's story in the midst of it. And if they got it right, we get to know them as people of God. And I think that at the end of my life, no matter what I write or preach or teach or share, that I hope to be known as a woman of God, a woman of faith. And so I'm okay sharing the dark things or the hard things because I know the good things outweigh them and that at the end of the day, they'll shine brighter. So that's me. And that's why I wrote Journey to Easier and Lighter.